Quiet Connection is proud to be affiliated with the Blue Dot Project through Postpartum Support International. As an ambassador, I am dedicated to promoting perinatal mental health awareness, spreading the blue dot as a symbol of support and solidarity, and ending the stigma and shame. The blue dot is a universal symbol for perinatal mental health and is owned by the community. That means you. Anyone can use it. You'll notice a blue dot on all of Quiet Connection's social media accounts. To learn more, visit thebluedotproject.org. Hi, welcome to Quiet Connection, a podcast dedicated to ending the stigma around postpartum mental health. I'm Chelsea. In this episode, Courtney, known as Beyond PPD on social media, shares her experiences with PMADs and the importance of support and connection. She expresses gratitude for the inspiration and support she receives from others who share their stories, and emphasizes the message that no one is alone in their struggles with perinatal mental health disorders. Let's hear from Courtney. Hello. Today I'm here with Courtney. Courtney, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing well. I'm tired, but I think that's just life.
Yeah?
I don't think that ever goes away anymore once you have a child.
No, definitely not.
No. Listeners may know Courtney from Instagram and social media as Beyond PPD.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, and that is how I found you. I actually, and members of our support group may recognize some of the things we've posted in our group and on our story because she makes some beautiful content that I like to share. I could list the things that I have written down for you, but it would be so much better coming from you. I'd love it if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and who you were before becoming a mom.
Yeah, so my name is Courtney. I am a writer. I have always been a writer ever since I was little. My parents will tell you I have had journals all over my room, always kept one with me. I always have a notebook in my bag. I have always been a writer and a storyteller. So in 2020, I had my first child, my daughter. I have 2 kids. I just had my second in August. So
congratulations.
Thank you. Things are still very fresh and new around here. He finally started sleeping through the night, so that's great.
Woohoo!
Yes. But yeah, they're both finally gotten to daycare, so things are a little bit like controlled chaos in the mornings. But with my daughter, had a completely normal, easy pregnancy even, like frequently I was just like, I wasn't sick. I had some food aversions, but just in the first trimester and they went away. Really didn't have any issues until the very end when everything is huge and you're uncomfortable and there's just nothing you can do about that. So really my pregnancy with her was easy as could be, as easy as when you're growing another human inside of you.
Yeah.
But after she was born, and I have always had, I've lived with anxiety most of my life, and my therapist and I actually figured out that it's not really anxiety, it's actually OCD.
Hey, same.
Right?
We figured that out after the fact.
Yes. Yeah. I'm like, I'm anxious about everything. Like when we go on vacation, I'm afraid my house is going to catch on fire. And she's like, that's not normal.
Yeah.
That's not normal anxiety. I'm like, I have to get up out of bed in the middle of the night to make sure my door's locked. And she's like, that's not normal anxiety.
Yeah. Yeah. I found out after I had my child too. It was like, oh yeah, no, that's OCD.
Yeah. I was like, that makes so much more sense. So, I mean, I have had experience with mental health before. I have always kind of been open about my mental health because I've had anxiety, OCD, had panic attacks, things like that. Been on medication for mental health concerns before. So I was aware that I had mental health issues. I don't like using the word issues, but
Yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
Things like that. But I had it under control. I was seeing a therapist. I was on medication. I wasn't worried about anything. So my daughter was born in late February of 2020. Which that should probably start setting off some alarm bells for some of you because spring of 2020, everything went insane.
Mm-hmm.
We actually have a very large support network. My husband and I only live about 20 minutes from where we grew up. So we are close to our parents. We have a large support network of family and friends. And all of a sudden, I remember we had actually bought one of those big jugs of hand sanitizer before she was born. Because we were like, we're going to have people over. It's our first baby. Like, they want to see her. And that ended up being one of the last times you could buy enormous jugs of hand sanitizer.
Yeah, you couldn't find it anywhere.
Exactly. And actually, after we brought her home, I mean, I had a normal delivery, only was in the hospital, the typical 48 hours, came home, had people over. My parents stayed with us for that first week, which was wonderful. We had people over. And then the first case of COVID-19 in the state of Indiana was actually identified at the hospital I delivered at.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm. It was 2 weeks after we had come home, thankfully. And obviously the maternity area is completely separate from everything else. They do a very good job of keeping it separate. Like, it's on a different like HVAC system than the rest of the hospital, like all of that. But I had people texting me and they were like, there was a COVID case at your hospital. Like, are you okay? And I'm like,
oh my God.
I'm like, we've been home for like 2 weeks. Like, things are fine.
Yeah.
Things are fine. But then we found out we were going into lockdown. And one of the things that my dad said to me before they left, after that first week that they stayed with us, was, you guys will be fine. She's actually a pretty easy baby. Famous last words. So we went into lockdown. And at the time, my parents are retail pharmacists, so they are dealing with the public day in and day out.
Yeah.
My mother-in-law was working HR for a manufacturing company that had to stay open. And my father-in-law was managing a grocery store. So these are all of these, right? Like, literally.
Oh my gosh. All the essential workers.
Yes, exactly. And as we are, watching all the press conferences about, flattening the curve and what we need to be doing to keep ourselves safe and stopping the spread and all of these things, we're noticing in the middle of the evenings, like around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock every evening, she starts crying. And we can't get her to stop. And when she's eating her bottles, she'll eat a whole bottle and then she'll start arching her back after she eats. And she'll just start screaming in pain after she eats. And we're first-time parents. We have no freaking idea what is happening right now. And like, she's inconsolable in the evenings for just hours. And, we're like, what are we doing wrong? And we both texted our parents and we were like, were we like this as kids? Were we like this as babies? Like, is this normal? And we're like, no, we don't remember you guys being like that. Which, 30 years. Your memory
fades.
All the good stuff and not the crap stuff.
Yeah.
But they were like, no, we don't remember being like that. And I remember asking her pediatrician at some of her first well check appointments that I could only go to by myself because you could only have one parent in there. So my husband had to drive us and then he would sit in the parking lot while we were in there. I remember asking him, like, what is a normal amount of crying? What is a normal amount of fussing? And they're like, oh, there's a wide range of normal. It's okay. Like, she seems fine. And it's just every single evening, like clockwork, this starts happening. At the same time, like, once we came home, like, I felt very overwhelmed and very anxious. And my parents went home. My husband, he took a week off from work. He actually gets 4 weeks paid leave, which is amazing.
Yeah.
But he took a week off of work and then he was like, I'm going to try and go back, and then that first week he went back. That first day I was like, I can't be by myself. I need someone here. I can't be by myself with this baby. And so my mom came back over and she was like, I'm going to stay here, but I'm going to make you do all the things.
Yeah.
And, everything was fine. If I had somebody there, I felt better. But I just had this overwhelming feeling of, I can't be by myself with this baby. Something is going to go wrong. And I also remember like at the time, like the house we were living in had this really, really steep staircase.
Mm.
And going up and down the stairs, like I would have these mental images of like, what if you miss a step? What if you slip when you're holding her? So like gripping her in one arm and like holding onto that railing, like white knuckling that railing.
Yeah.
Because I was having these thoughts of like, what if you drop her down the stairs? The staircase is really steep. What if you slip and fall while you're holding her? And I'm like, what?
Like, what is this?
Yeah, like, what are these horrible thoughts that are in my brain right now? And so, I mean, we're all by ourselves. We're alone. We can't have anyone over for help. We can't have anybody, nobody can come over to help us because everyone's essential workers. Everyone in our family is essential workers. They're all dealing with the public. We're not supposed to leave the house. We're not supposed to go anywhere. No one's supposed to come to us. And it's very, very isolating, very lonely. I remember my husband was only back at work for like a week before he texted me and he was like, we're being sent home. I'm packing up my stuff. We're being sent home indefinitely. We don't know when we're coming back. And at first I was like, yes, someone's home with me.
Yeah.
Like everything's going to be okay because someone's home with me. And because she didn't ever want me to put her down. I called her my little Velcro baby. Like I'm a very like type A, very detail oriented person. So like when I was building my baby registry, I was like looking at all the different swings and bouncers and comparing and contrasting and what are the pros of this one and what are the cons of this one. So I had like all of this gear, like this one, it swings, but you can also detach the swing and it turns into a rocker and like all of this stuff. She hated every single thing.
Of course.
Every single thing. So like I would just camp out on the couch and hold her and like surround myself with snacks that I could eat with like one hand.
Yeah.
Because I could not put her down. If I put her down, she would start screaming. She could be dead asleep and I would put her in the pack and play and her eyes would just like, boop.
Of course.
Just like pop right back open. So like I felt like I was trapped because I could not put this baby down or else she'd start screaming. And I mean, as a first-time mom, that's very, you're like, what are you doing wrong that like I can't put my kid down anywhere? And my husband's work had never had a work from home policy before the pandemic. So they were very like, you have to track exactly what you were doing and you have to report back exactly what you were doing, exactly what you were working on at this time and this time and this time. So I basically had to pretend that he was not upstairs in our loft turned office, that he was at his real office.
Yeah.
Because he had to be working and he had to, account for where he was and what he was doing. So he was home, but it was like he wasn't at home, if that makes sense. And all of this time, everyone is, there's this pathogen, this disease that we don't know how it affects infants. We don't know how it affects kids. We don't know, we don't really know how it spreads. Like I remember he would go grocery shopping and I would make him go upstairs, shower, change clothes. And I would just like surround myself with all of our groceries and a thing of like cleaning wipes.
Yes.
And I would just wipe them all down.
We did the same thing.
Yes.
Yes.
And like I would I would go after like every doorknob that he touched and like clean it. And I would go up and down the stair railing and clean it. Because I was like, I don't know how this is spread. And I can't.
None of us did.
Yeah. Because again, with these thoughts that I was being tortured with, I was like, what if she gets sick?
Yeah.
What if she gets really sick? What if she has to be taken back to the hospital and I can't be there because that hospital is locked down and they are not allowing visitors. They are not allowing people in. What if my baby is in like the NICU or the PICU and I cannot see her because she's sick? So that was another tormenting thought. And again, all of this is going on and she is getting more and more inconsolable. She's getting more and more to the point where if she's awake and she's not eating, she is crying. She is screaming. And even after she eats, when she's hungry, she is screaming in pain. And I remember there was one night, she had been crying for hours at this point. And we finally texted my parents and we were like, something is wrong. Like we recorded her crying. We were like, something is wrong. Like she sounds like she's in pain. Something is wrong here. And they were like, well, give her some Tylenol just to see if she can sleep and then get her into the pediatrician in the morning. See if you can get into the pediatrician. And so like my husband goes to the cabinet and he pulls out that infant Tylenol and I went, wait, what if we give her too much? What if she overdoses? What if she dies? He's like, it's infant Tylenol.
Yeah.
He's like he showed me the syringe where like it won't let you like go more than like what's on there. And he's like, your parents are pharmacists. They just told us this is okay. You know, like she's going to be all right. And I was like, but what if we give her too much? She's really tiny. What if we give her too much? And he's like, I can't give her too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
But like my brain is immediately like, what if something goes wrong? What if she overdoses and she dies?
Yeah.
And finally, like it got to the point where the screaming overwhelmed my terrible thoughts. And I was like, just give it to her because I can't take this anymore. And she did finally sleep at that point. And we did take her to the doctor the next morning and we found out that she had silent reflux. So when most people think of infant reflux, they think of like exorcist style, like you eat your bottle and then it's just everywhere. Yeah. So what happened with her was she would eat and we could hear it. Like we could hear the gurgle in her throat, but instead of spitting up, she would swallow it. Mm-hmm. So she's getting all of that acid coming up and then going back down. Mm-hmm. So like, that's why she's screaming in pain because her poor little throat is just like, you know, getting all of this acid twice because she's not spitting it up and she's swallowing it. And so they switched us to a comfort formula, which is more expensive. It was the step below like Nutrimogen and Alimentum and like the allergy based formulas. So that's more expensive. Yep. And then they did put her on reflux medication, which helped immensely. And she was actually on that until she was a year old because it just didn't go away until she was a year old and she was, you know, upright all the time and eating solid foods and that sort of thing. So that was one thing taken down. Got that taken care of. So she's no longer in pain after she's eating, but she's still screaming a lot. She is still crying a lot. And, you know, sometimes I would, you know, we'd walk her up and down the hallway. We would bounce on an exercise ball. We would take her into a dark room and turn off, like we wouldn't have any sound, we wouldn't have any lights, and we would just rock. And we called it factory resetting the baby.
I love that.
Yes, like no stimulation, none whatsoever. We would just take her into a dark room and rock. And sometimes some of that stuff worked. Sometimes it worked. And then sometimes like none of it worked. And we were just rocking with her and trying to settle her and crying with her and just begging her to stop crying. Yeah. And all of this time, my brain is telling me, you're a terrible mom. You've made a really horrible mistake because your sole job right now is to console this baby. And you can't even do that. Like, you messed up big time and you're terrible at this. I mean, like when you're that isolated and when you're dealing with a baby that doesn't stop crying, which is one of the most helpless feelings I have ever had. You know, you believe those things. You believe them wholeheartly that, you know, clearly you're doing something wrong because your friends' babies aren't like this. Right. I mean, I'm in my early 30s, so a lot of my friends and we all had kids at the same time. All of our kids are, you know, within a year of each other. And your kids, your friends' kids aren't like that. They don't cry all the time.
Or at least they're not telling you about it.
Right. Yeah. But so clearly the issue's you know, you're doing something wrong. And so I'm basically being tortured by all of these thoughts. And I'm crying a lot. I'm upset. I feel like I have made a mistake. And it culminated in, you know, I never had thoughts of hurting myself or hurting my daughter, which was something that I was able to be like, it's not postpartum depression.
That was your that was the line.
Right. Because I believed that postpartum depression was crying a lot and you were going to hurt yourself or hurt your baby. And I was like, well, I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want to hurt my baby. It's not.
So I must be
depression.
Fine.
It's not something like that. I did have thoughts of running away, of wanting to be out of the house because they would be better off without me in the house. I didn't want to die. I didn't want to hurt myself. I just believed that my husband and my daughter would be better off if I was not in our home. Like, I could go to my parents' house, I could go to my, whatever, I could go to my sister's, I could go to a friend's, but they would be better off if I wasn't here with them. And it all kind of culminated one morning. She was still asleep. I woke up and she was still asleep in the bassinet. And the way our house was set up at that time was our master bedroom was over here. There was like a little loft space where we had our desk and where my husband was working. And then right next to it was our laundry room. And so I was like, I'll do some laundry, because even though she doesn't spit up as often, like, she still spits up a lot. So, like, we're going through multiple outfits. We're going through multiple burp cloths. Like, everybody is frequently covered in spit up at our house. And so I was like, I'll do some laundry. I'll try and get some caught up on that. And as I'm in the laundry room, so like just, maybe 20 feet down the hallway is our bedroom. And I hear her start rustling and crying in our bedroom. And I just leaned against our washer and started sobbing. Mm-hmm. And my husband's sitting at the desk, and he looks over me, he's like, what, are you okay? What's going on? And all I could say was, I can't do this. I can't do this. And bless my husband, he knew something was wrong with me before I could even admit it to myself. But he was like, I will go get her. I will take the day off. I will use PTO. I will take the day off. I will go get her. You go back to our room. You go to sleep. Turn on the white noise machine so you can't hear us, and you just go sleep. Like, I've got this. Go. And so, I slept for a while, because she didn't sleep through the night for a while, just because of the reflux and all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so when I got up, he was like, will you please, like, text your therapist, or will you call your OB? Like, something is not right. Like, will you do this? And I'm like, I'm only like a week and a half from my 6-week postpartum appointment. Like, I can make it until then.
Yeah.
And like, it was like the next day, a couple days later, or something like that, I get a call from my OB's office. And they're like, we're switching your postpartum appointment to virtual. Mm. And I'm like, hold up.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a second. Because in that moment, like, and I'm sure a lot of new moms feel this way, you go from seeing your OB like every week, especially in that third trimester, to suddenly you don't see them at all for 6 weeks. And you're seeing your pediatrician a lot during those first 6 weeks. But nobody's really asking about you. No one, it's all about the baby. And so at that moment, it felt like the one thing that was related to me, that was about me, it was not about my baby, it was about me. And my one lifeline to the outside world, because we're not supposed to leave.
Right.
There is a raging pandemic outside. We're not supposed to leave. My one tether to that outside world was cut. Mm-hmm. And so I immediately start crying again. And I'm like, hold up. I'm like, I have stitches. Because I tore and I had an episiotomy. So I'm like, yeah. Yeah. So I'm like, I have stitches. Like, someone's got to check my stitches. They're like, no, we've determined that the postpartum appointment need to be virtual. And I'm like, okay, hold on. I'm like, wait, I want to get the arm implant birth control. I'm like, you can't make me come virtual because you can't put something in my arm if I'm on the phone. And they're like, no, that's considered, an elective. The health department's considered that an elective procedure. So you can't come in. We'll put you back on the pill. And I'm like, that's not what I want. Like, someone let me back in this office. And I pleaded with that poor receptionist, like, please let me come in.
Yeah.
And she was like, I'm sobbing and begging and pleading her, like, please let me come in. Let me see my doctor, like, please. And she was like, there's nothing I can do. This is just what's been determined by the hospital. I'm really, really sorry. There's nothing I can do. And that was just absolutely devastating. I mean, even 3 years later, and having had a completely normal postpartum appointment with my son, I'm still pretty salty about that, because I don't know who decided that postpartum women should get the short end of the stick on that, but they made a huge mistake.
Yeah. I mean, and that's kind of, if we want to get into it later, we get the short end of the stick a lot.
We do. Yeah. We do. Because there's that quote going around that, like, the baby is the candy and the mom is the wrapper. Mm. And once the baby is born, like, there's the candy, there's what you wanted. The wrapper gets thrown away.
Yeah.
So, and I felt that to my core at that point, because I was like, you don't care about me.
Mm-hmm.
You only care about this baby. You don't care about me. And so we finally got to that 6-week appointment, and it was over the phone, and they called me. And I mean, like, I even asked my husband, I was like, can you, like, try and see if, like, I still have stitches or something doesn't look right? Because I don't know what I'm looking at, and I don't really want to.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because I'm like, I don't really want to know what damage has been done down there.
No, I did not look either. No.
I was like, can you just, like, look and make sure there's nothing looks weird?
That's how you know you found a good partner.
Yeah, and he was like, okay. So, bless my husband, he was the one that checked my stitches 6-week postpartum for me, because I wasn't at the office. I didn't get to see my doctor until, like, that summer. So, bless him, he was like, I think everything looks right. It looks like they're gone. Like,
from my limited medical experience.
Right. He's an accountant. Like,
Yeah.
you know, so they call me and they're like, how are you doing? How are you doing physically? I'm like, well, I think everything is okay. Like, I mean, I can sit normally again, so woohoo. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, it feels like everything's normal. And then she goes, and how are you feeling mentally? And it was like the floodgates just opened. And I was just like, not good. Something is wrong. I'm crying all the time. I don't feel like I'm good at this. I feel like I made a mistake. I want to run away. And I think I was able to do that because I was used to talking about my mental health. I was already in therapy. I had already been on medication. I was used to being like, I'm heckin' anxious.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think I was able to open up with her, not just because I have a really great relationship with my OB, but because I am used to talking about my mental health. And I can't help but think about all the moms that slipped through the cracks in spring of 2020, spring and summer of 2020, because their appointments were made virtual or over the phone, and they were not used to talking about their mental health, or they thought it was normal. Because for a long time, I was like, oh, these are just the baby blues. They told me about the baby blues at the hospital. Like, this is just the baby blues. My husband's like, it's been 6 weeks. They told you that was like 2 weeks. And if it went longer than that, it wasn't the baby blues anymore. I was like, no, it's the baby blues. So how many moms were just like, oh, this is the baby blues. They told me about this at the hospital. This is normal. Or how many of them knew something was wrong, but are not used to talking about their mental health, because mental health is still stigmatized, especially in moms.
Yeah.
We're expected to do it all. We're expected to be super moms. We're expected, this is the happiest time of your life. You just had a baby. This is a wonderful, joyous time. What do you mean you're sad?
Yeah.
What do you mean you're angry? What do you mean you have thoughts about dropping your baby down the stairs? Like, nobody says those things because people would look at you like you're crazy.
Yeah.
Or they're afraid that if they say those things, they're afraid that if I say I'm having these scary thoughts that just come into my head unbidden, I'm not wanting to think this, but I'm having these thoughts of dropping my baby down my staircase, someone's going to take that baby away from them.
Mm-hmm.
So how many of those moms in the spring of 2020, the spring and summer of 2020, slipped through the cracks because they were not prepared to talk about their mental health? Or they were afraid that if they admitted to thinking these things, that someone was going to take their baby away. Like, I consider myself so incredibly lucky. And I say this every time I tell this story. I've been on podcasts. I've done survivor panels with Postpartum Support International. Like, every time I tell my story, I say how lucky I am. Because even in the midst of a pandemic, when I was seeing my providers virtually, my OB heard my concerns and she said, you're going to be okay. This is, she didn't use the term, this is normal, because none of this is normal. But she was like, this is common. I think you have postpartum depression. We're going to get you fixed. We're going to get you help. And my OB and my primary care physician are in the same hospital network. They're actually only a floor apart.
Oh, nice.
So all she had to do was send a message through, they use My Chart. I'm
Yep.
sure a lot of people are familiar with My Chart. All she had to do was call my primary care physician's office, send a message through My Chart. All my records were in the system already, and just say, hey, I think she has postpartum depression. Got a call from my primary care physician's office, and they were like, we need to schedule you a virtual appointment. And, they went through, they didn't use the Edinburgh scale. They used a different.
I hate the Edinburgh scale. I hate it.
Yeah, they used a different inventory. I don't remember what one it was, but it's different from the Edinburgh. And she was like, yeah, I think you have postpartum depression. We're going to put you on Lexapro. We're going to get you help. And I already had a therapist. So all I had to do was text her and say, hey, they think I have postpartum depression. Something is wrong. Like, can I get back on your schedule? And they had switched to teletherapy. So I was able to, see her virtually, get back on her schedule weekly, work through a lot of these things. And I was able to get on medication. I'm still on my Lexapro. I love my Lexapro because it's an SSRI. So there's a period where you're taking it for 2 weeks or so, and it takes a little while to build up to therapeutic levels in your system.
Yep.
And I remember vividly the day that it hit therapeutic levels in my system, because it suddenly felt like there was color in my world again. Like there was light again, like this shade or this curtain had been lifted off of me. And I was like, oh, things are better.
Yeah.
Things are better. She's still crying a lot. She still has colic.
Yeah. That didn't stop.
That didn't stop until she was about 4 or 5 months old.
Mm-hmm.
But I suddenly felt capable of dealing with that. I didn't feel like it was world ending. So I mean, that I was able to get help. I did not fall through the cracks. Even in the midst of a global pandemic, I was able to get help. And I consider myself so incredibly lucky, because even in a really, really horrible time, everything lined up for me that I was able to get help and I was able to get better. And I remember beyond PPD came to be, because I remember I would be, I'd be nap trapped because, like I said, my daughter didn't want me to put her down.
Yeah.
She didn't nap independently by herself until she was like 10 months old. And she still hates sleep. Like, even as a 3.5-year-old, like, she still hates sleep. She's a great sleeper once she's asleep. Like, once she's asleep, she is out. She is dead to the world. You cannot wake her up. She's great once she's asleep. Getting her there is terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. Fight it to the end.
Yes. She has such bad FOMO. She does not want to miss out on things. And I'm like, trust me, you're not missing out on anything. Like, if something exciting happens, I will come wake you up. But, so, I mean, I was able to get help, and I remember, scrolling through social media when I'm nap trapped and like searching hashtags on Instagram and just being like, is what I'm feeling real? Is this a real thing? Or is there something wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
And I came to that account because I felt like I needed to be, even if I just tell one mom that is nap trapped with her baby and having these terrifying thoughts that scare her to death and feels like something's wrong with her, if she can just see that and realize that she's not alone and there is not something wrong with her and that she can get better,
Mm-hmm.
then I have done what I've set out to do. I have helped somebody, because I was that mom.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how that I came to create that account. Was I was like, I feel like I'm being called to let people know that this is okay. It's not normal. It's common, but it's not normal, and you can get better.
I like that you're wording it that way, because it's well, I'll say, like, it's different. A lot of what I say is like, this is normal, because what I associate as normal is common. But you're right. It's not you. It's not your normal you.
Yes.
But yes, it is common, and it's so much more common than we're being told.
Yes. I remember when I was when I started talking about, I had postpartum depression. I felt terrible after I had my daughter. I believed I had made a mistake. I believed I was a terrible mom. As I started, and I was afraid originally to talk about this.
Yeah.
Even someone who is open about her mental health and has said things like, I live with anxiety, I live with OCD, I have all these things. I was afraid to say that I had postpartum depression because there's such a stigma around perinatal mental health conditions. Yeah. Because like I said, like this is supposed to be the happiest time of your life.
That's the narrative that's pushed on us.
Like you just had a baby and they're snuggly and they're wonderful and they smell really good and all they do is like sleep and snuggle with you, which that does happen. My son is like that. But sometimes you have one like my daughter where she's a real tough baby, but God, she's an amazing toddler.
Yeah.
She has big feelings, which sucks when she's upset, but man, when she is happy, like she lights up the whole entire world. Like she is an amazing toddler. I think she just didn't like being a baby. Like she wants to be able to do things by herself. She's very into like independent and pretend play. Like the only time she wants us to play with her is like when she's making things in her kitchen. Otherwise she's like, nah, I got my own story. I got my own play. Like, bye.
Can she teach my 8-year-old how to do that, please?
So like she's just an amazing toddler. And preschooler. Like I think she just did not like being a baby. But yeah, like as I started talking more about like this is what happened to me, I had friends tell me, I think I had this too. I had people my mother's age tell me, I think I had this too. I had people, my grandparents have unfortunately passed away, but my husband's grandparents are still around. And his grandma texted me and she was like, I think I felt like this.
Yeah.
And they're like, but we just thought it was normal. We just thought this was how early motherhood is. And I'm like, no, no, you don't. Like, it's so common. It affects 1 in 5 to 7 new moms. It affects 1 in 10 dads.
Yeah.
It affects adoptive parents.
Yes.
Like it is so common, but we don't talk about it.
No, and it actually, I was just talking to someone about this yesterday, and it's like years after the fact we talk about it, and we like you're saying, we realize like, oh yeah, that was me too, or that was me too. Can you imagine if this is just something that we just talked about it?
Yes.
Like before the fact.
Yes, the difference it would make.
Yes. And we even like, I mean, we went down a rabbit hole when we were talking about it, but like there's this push, like, don't scare new moms, don't scare new moms. And it's like, we're not trying to scare anybody. We're trying to prepare people.
Right.
And the rabbit hole we went down was like, what if we talked about this as early as high school sex ed? Like, if you're going to talk about reproduction and what it means, talk about what it can do to your body, talk about what it can do to your mind. And then you're going into this as an adult, being like, oh yeah, I remember I learned in high school my hormones can get out of balance and I might have, you know what I mean? Like it's just normal.
We have to like entirely reframe sex ed because I don't know what state you're in. I'm in Indiana. So
I'm in Vermont.
So we are abstinence only. Like I was taught, like, don't do that.
I know. Well, the joke I made was, well, if you want to push abstinence, just tell them about PPD.
Right.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like we don't talk about how it affects your mind and how it can happen from conception on.
Yeah.
We don't talk about how it affects your body. Like, I mean, I expected that because I didn't really gain a whole lot of weight with her. I basically just gained like baby weight. But and then because we were in the pandemic and we were dealing with a baby that never stops crying, like we ordered it a lot and I gained all of it back.
Yeah. I mean, whatever. You were in survival mode.
Exactly. But like, even if I had kept it off, like I never would have fit back into my pre-pregnancy jeans because now I have hips for the first time in my life.
Right. And
they didn't go back. And nobody told me that, yeah, your body changes forever.
Yeah.
Like you don't just push the baby out and everything is back to normal. No. Like that doesn't happen.
And it goes deep. It goes deep.
Yes.
They're learning now. You carry your baby's genes and DNA in you forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like your body and your mind you're not the same person that you were when you went into pregnancy.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
We set new parents up to be like, oh, the baby's born and everything just goes right back to normal. And that's not the case at all.
No.
And it's not to scare new moms, because there are a lot of moms that have great postpartum periods. And I think it's because I did a lot of prep work and I knew what the heck I was going into.
Mm-hmm.
But with my son, it was much better.
Yeah.
Like I stayed on my antidepressant the whole way through. And he's a totally different baby. Like they say, like your first and your second are total opposites. Like he's a totally different baby.
Yeah.
He sleeps. I don't really have to work to put him to sleep. He just goes to sleep. He takes his bottles. He sleeps by himself.
Oh my God.
I had the stereotypical, like, snuggly, wonderful maternity leave this time around. So, I mean, it does happen. You do have these wonderful experiences. But for the ones that go sideways or go south, like, we need to be preparing moms for this.
Yeah.
And I've talked about that with my friends. Like, we don't prepare moms. We don't talk about, like, pelvic floor therapy is a thing.
Yep. That's another thing that's coming up
like,
really
oh,
often.
You have a baby and you sneeze and you pee a little. Like, it's totally normal. And I'm like, no.
No. Yes.
Like, no, we don't have to accept that.
No. And again, we're saying the same thing over and over again, but it's not to scare, it's to prepare. Mm-hmm. And it's also not like I feel like a Boy Scout saying that, sort of, but like it's also not like disaster preparation. It's more like, hey, let's build you a toolbox. Yes. You may not need all these tools, but it would be good to have them. Yeah, yes. Exactly.
You need to know what it looks like if things are going sideways and what tools you could use to stop that before it gets worse.
Yes.
Because I mean, I say it over and over again. I got lucky because at my 6-week appointment, I got better. Mm-hmm. I was having these thoughts pretty much from the start. Like once we were released from the hospital, I joke even like getting her dressed for the first time in the hospital to take her home. I was like, oh my God, like she's really floppy. Like how am I? Because the outfit I brought for her was like a onesie and pants. Learn from that. My husband went, oh my gosh, my son went home in a sleeper.
Yes. Just do the zip up or the button up.
Because the first time I tried to put a onesie over her head in the hospital, I was like, oh my God, this is terrifying.
I can picture it.
I was having these thoughts and these feelings like from the start. And actually, one of the things that my hospital system and my OB's practice learned from the pandemic was we can have virtual appointments. And so this time around, my second time around, I had a 2-week postpartum appointment virtually. Mm. And if that had happened, with my daughter, maybe this could have been caught sooner because I was having these thoughts and feelings pretty much right away. And I know that's not the case with a lot of moms. A lot of moms they'll be just fine. And then maybe when they start weaning, if they're breastfeeding, when they start weaning, that's when the thoughts creep in. Because we don't call them postpartum anymore because they're perinatal. They go from conception to 1 year postpartum. Like that is your range for when these things can happen and when these things can develop.
I feel like, I'm kind of the mindset that you're never out of postpartum. Mm-hmm. Like I know scientifically and medically and whatever, those are the mm-hmm. terms that you use. But I feel like once you've birthed a human, no matter what that looks like, whether you have carried a baby to term, whether you have had a stillbirth, whether you have had a miscarriage, or whatever, once mm-hmm. you have gone through the experience, you're forever in that postpartum period.
Yes. I agree.
And another thing, like you were just saying, like something that's not understood is it doesn't always develop right away. Sometimes mm-hmm. it does, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it comes months later. Sometimes, I think because there's such a stigma, what's really scary is if you don't ask for help or if you don't get help, it can stay.
Yes. I think I saw a study that like if it's not treated, the symptoms can linger like up to 3 years postpartum.
Yes. But it doesn't have to.
Right.
It's completely treatable.
Yes, it is temporary and treatable.
Yes.
But you have to be able, And unfortunately, this is just the way our medical system works. That is a whole rant for another day. But
yeah, that's a whole other podcast.
You have to
yes.
be able to advocate for yourself and say, I'm not feeling like myself. And you have to feel comfortable being honest on those questionnaires and on those mood inventories.
Yep.
Because how easy is it to say, like, because you're just circling things on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
How easy to be like, nah, I'm fine. I don't worry about things more than usual. I'm not crying more than usual.
Well, and it depends on the day, too.
Yeah.
It depends on the day that you're filling the thing out. Like, you could be having an okay day that day.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, too, like, I hate the Edinburgh scale. I can't stand it because it's been the same forever, for as long as anyone can remember. It's so vague. And it's just like, so I'm a special educator. I come from an education background. It's just like any other, like, standardized test. It's biased. It's completely biased. So if you're coming at it, you and I are coming at it from completely different perspectives, backgrounds, socioeconomic statuses. Like, we did a whole series in my support group about the BIPOC community.
Yes.
And how many people in different, especially like Latin American cultures, aren't going to report because of the stigma of their culture, or people who are Black or brown are not going to report in the same way that a white person is going to report. Like, that test is just not
like literally, I am
good.
a white woman from the suburbs. Like,
yes,
I feel safe reporting how I feel because I am a white woman from the suburbs.
Yes. And
they're not going to take my baby because I am a white woman from the suburbs.
And you have a history of mental health that you have had treated and that you feel comfortable talking about.
Yep.
And that is not a luxury to people in the BIPOC community.
It's 100% a privilege. It is. It really is.
Yeah. So I hate the Edinburgh scale. And, but that's that. So see, I told you sometimes we can get into these, like, I get heated, but like I do, but it's good because it is 100% possible to get treatment, and it is 100% possible to get better.
Yes.
But you have to advocate for yourself, or you have to have someone who will advocate for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
And, like, my husband and I always talk about how wonderful he was, and he still is. He is the best partner I could ever ask for, and we make an incredible team. And a lot of things that could have broken us have just made us stronger. Like that early 2020 period, that could have broken us.
Yeah.
But we are still here. We made it through. But I mean, he knew something was wrong with me before I could even admit it to myself.
Yeah.
Like, I struggled with breastfeeding early on. I had wanted to breastfeed her. And at the time, the medication I was on for my anxiety was one that it wasn't super compatible with breastfeeding. Like, they're like, we'll let you take it if the risk outweighs if the benefit outweighs the risk, that sort of thing. So I was, before I had her, I was prepared to, I was like, if it doesn't work, if things are wonky, if I don't feel right, then I'll just, we can use formula. Formula's great. When you're in that moment, when you're freshly postpartum, you're not thinking like that anymore. No. And I was struggling with breastfeeding her. They came in and they checked her latch multiple times at the hospital. Like, it's perfect. It looks great. It hurt like hell.
Yeah.
It hurt like hell.
They don't tell you that.
Like, toe curling hurt. And there was one time, it was after we were home, and it was a middle of the night feeding, and my husband would get up with me in the middle of the night. And I only made it like 4 or 5 days breastfeeding her. So we were just still home. And it was the middle of the night, and I cried through an entire feeding, just absolutely sobbed in pain through an entire feeding. And he was like, he took her from me to burp her, and he was just like, this is not worth it.
Yeah.
It's not worth it. We can feed her formula. He was like, I was formula fed.
Yeah.
You can't tell a difference. You can't tell a difference.
No.
And like I say now, like, they all end up eating Cheerios off your floor anyway. Like,
yes. Do you follow Jen Hamilton on?
I do, yeah.
They're all going to end up eating McDonald's French fries out of the butts of their car seats.
Yes, like I frequently like my daughter will have like a bowl of Cheerios, and like toddlers, preschoolers, like they'll tip it a little bit and like it'll fall in the like I was carrying my son in his car seat, and she had her bowl of Cheerios to take in the car because mornings are chaos and we eat breakfast
Yep.
in the car. and,
Yep.
and she was tipping them a little bit and some of them spilled out onto our driveway. And she's like, oh, I'm like, don't eat that.
Please stop.
I'm like, you have plenty in the bowl. Don't eat that.
We call it trail salt. It's just
Yes.
a little dirt. Just a little trail salt.
Yes. But I mean, I was feeling so incredibly guilty about not being able to breastfeed her and that not working out. And even from the start, he was just like, will you text your therapist?
Yeah.
Will you call your doctor? And I was just like, no, this is fine. I can get through this. It's the baby blues. It's my hormones crashing. It's this and this and this and this. And like all these excuses that we come up with because we don't want to admit that something's wrong. Mm-hmm. Because there is this belief that we're moms and we can do anything because we're moms. And I mean, we can do anything.
We can.
We can. But it's also okay to say, yes, I can do anything, but I also need help.
Yes.
And
you're worthy of help.
I am worthy of help. Yes. I say that you probably have seen posts from this on my social media. I always say like, you deserve help. You deserve support. You are worthy of that. And asking for help remains the bravest thing I have ever done.
Yes.
Asking for help does not make you weak. You are strong to ask for help, to be deep in those trenches and reach out your hand and say, I need help. That is brave.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. And yeah, there's so much that goes along with it. And that's what we're trying to do. That's what you're trying to do. That's what I'm trying to do. I said this yesterday. I don't know if it's that like phenomenon where you like buy a car and you see all that car everywhere because you have it. But like, since I've always been a fierce mental health advocate, because just like you, my entire life, I have had anxiety and depression, which now I know is OCD and depression. Yep. But so I've always been very much into the mental health scene and advocating for that. But since experiencing what I did with both of my kids, and both were very different. With my oldest, it was very similar to what you're describing. With my youngest, it was an entire journey that was terrifying. But I've narrowed my lens into postpartum mental health and perinatal mental health. And I don't know if it's because of that I'm seeing it everywhere. Right. Or if people are finally starting to notice us.
And talk about it.
Yes. The thing that gives me like an inkling of hope, and I'm curious what your thoughts are, the fact that the FDA has now approved 2 treatments specific to postpartum depression. Still have mixed feelings on both. I received brexanolone, the infusion. It did not work for me. Okay. And the pill I don't know enough about. So
because it's so brand new.
It's so brand new. I actually have an episode that's out already where I talk to a perinatal psychiatric nurse where we discuss these things. So I don't bring that up to say like, yay, our problems are solved. I bring it up to say they're noticing. And I think it's twofold. And my husband says this too, because I'm very much like the empath, the emotional driven one in our relationship. He's very much like the logical. Same.
Again, accountant, writer. Like we're very, that's just the way our brains work. But he says it's like hardware and software. The hardware is the chemical imbalance in your brain. Yep. That is corrected by medication. The software is the therapy, the peer support, the support groups, the coping skills. Yes. And they work together. You need both.
Yes. Yeah. And I say that too all the time, because I hate when I do this. I don't like infusing my things into things, but because so much of what you're saying resonates with me. I've been on medication for most of my adulthood. I didn't take it as a kid. Same. But I had a very complicated medication journey with my youngest, who is 17 months, and because of everything that I went through. So I have a very complicated relationship with medication. And what the psychiatrists and the doctors kept saying to me was, the medicine is the tool to help you access your toolbox.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
They're like, I know you don't want to take this, but you can't open your box without the key.
Yes. Yes.
And that was kind of what it took for me to be like, okay, all right. And it was absolutely true. Once
They work together.
Yes, once we found the right medication combination, I was able to start taking in those DBT strategies. And so like for any mama who may, and everybody's journey is different.
Yes.
Everybody's journey is different. And I completely respect however you want to go about it. But if you're on the fence and it can be that key for you, take the key and open the toolbox.
And you're not destined to be on medication your entire life.
No.
I mean, I likely will be because before I had postpartum depression, I already had a history of mental health concerns. And I have accepted that, and I'm fine with that.
Yep.
Because my medication allows me to be myself.
Yes.
And there are a lot of people that if like this is your first experience with, I mean, and I am not a doctor, I am not a psychiatrist.
No, none of us have medical degrees here.
But I mean, like if this is your first experience with mental health, you may need it just for a few months, a year, or something like that, and then you're able to wean off of it.
Yeah.
This is not a lifetime sentence.
Nope.
Some people it is, some people it isn't, because everyone is different and everyone responds to treatment differently.
Exactly. I kind of want to get into how you found your way into Postpartum Support International.
So, yeah, I found my way into Postpartum Support International through The Climb Out of the Darkness.
Yes.
I think it was Facebook. I found they were doing a Facebook Live about The Climb. This was late 2020, I think. So I was feeling better. I was doing better. And I have been involved with volunteering and giving back. I'm in a service organization. I was heavily involved with the Alzheimer's Association for many years because I lost 2 grandparents to Alzheimer's disease and my husband's grandmother. So we are very familiar with Alzheimer's disease, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But I was heavily involved with the Walk to End Alzheimer's for several years. And I still love that cause. I still love that event. I still love the Alzheimer's Association very much. They hold a very special place in my heart. But as they were talking about The Climb, I was like, I have experience doing this. I've done this before. I've worked on committees like this before. I could do this.
Yeah. And
so I signed up to lead a climb here in my community. I'm just north of Indianapolis. I'm in one of the suburbs of Indianapolis. And since I decided to do a state climb where it would benefit the state chapter, I was connected to my state PSI chapter, PSI Indiana. And they had an opening for social media, actually. So I am actually the social media chair for PSI Indiana.
Yes, you are.
You see all of PSI Indiana's social media. That's me as well.
Yes.
So that's how I got into PSI. And PSI is just an amazing organization. And all of their resources are free. Like if you are a parent struggling with your mental health, they have over 30 support groups at this point for just about any range.
I was going to say, they're so diverse.
Parent, yes.
Yes.
They have support coordinators that if you have realized something is wrong and I need help, but I don't know where to look, I don't know where to start, you can reach out to the helpline and they will connect you with a support coordinator who knows the support groups and the therapists and the psychiatrists in your area. And they will ask, if you have insurance, if you have payment concerns, if you have any of these things, like your support coordinator will work with you and help you find resources near you and help you get in and help you take out that step of you having to search for something when you are sleep deprived and postpartum and you're either your baby's entire food source or even if you're formula feeding, that is still a lot, like keeping track of bottles and formula levels and all of that. And so they take that off your plate for you and they do the searching for you. And they have peer mentors. They have somebody that has, they're recovered from a postpartum or perinatal mental health condition. And they connect you with a peer mentor, and you're with that peer mentor for 6 months to a year, and they help you throughout your recovery journey. Like, I cannot say enough good things about PSI.
Yeah.
I absolutely love PSI.
It was the only thing with my experience with my youngest. It was the only resource that I could find. Like, I was so I'm in Vermont. We're very, very rural. We're very, very small. We actually no longer have a PSI chapter. We did, and we don't anymore. I'm hoping to rally some people and start a new chapter up here. But anyway, I was desperate. I was desperate to find something, and PSI was the only thing that I could find. I didn't end up utilizing them because things got so bad so fast. But after the fact,
right,
I've looked into them so much, and I've recommended them so much. They're literally listed on my website as one of the resources, and like the number one resource to go to, because they will find you exactly who you need. So yes, so that was why I was super excited and I was going through your blog, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's doing all this incredible work for PSI too. Like it's amazing. And I love that not only are you doing beyond PPD, you're also doing the social media for PSI in your state, which is amazing. My train derailed for a second there. This is good though. Usually it's happened 3 or 4 times at this point, and this is the first time. So I gotta try to jump the tracks and bring it back. So yeah, like you've done such an amazing job. Like I have not had to. I had this whole list of questions for you, and you like hit every single bullet. You can tell that you do this and you've done this, and so you've made my job easy. Yeah. Editing is not going to be a problem for this episode, except for my stuff. But so yeah, so like you've walked us through your journey so beautifully up to the point you now have your son, and your experience was so different. Encouraging my listeners, if you're not already following Courtney, follow Courtney, because her content's beautiful. Like this is the other thing. I'm learning social media, and I am an educator, so like every week is a new theme and a new like your whole page is so beautifully cohesive and like yes. So like check it out. It's pretty and informative, but you also can see the journey that you've gone through. I love that you're reiterating the message to my listeners that it's like it's what they say at PSI, like you're not alone, you can get help, or with help you can get better.
You're not alone. You are not to blame. With help you will be well.
Yes. And you are living, breathing proof of that. And every pregnancy and birth and child is different. Just because you've had it once doesn't mean you'll have it again.
I did not have it this time.
Right. And you might.
I mean, I'm only 4 months postpartum, so things can change.
Yeah.
Because like I said, it's up to a year that you can develop a perinatal mental health condition. But I talk about just how wildly different this time around, because this time I had a much harder pregnancy with my son. Like I was actually sick this time. I was exhausted. I ended up developing gestational diabetes, which is just a whole
own
new
set of challenges. Yeah.
I was induced with him 2 weeks early, actually, because my OB believed I was on insulin. I had to go on insulin. And around like 2 or 3 weeks before my due date. So I was doing like non-stress tests, the whole shebang. And we noticed that like my insulin doses were going down. And she's like, we might need to induce you earlier than we talked about, because that could mean your placenta's failing.
Oh.
Yeah. So, whole different experience. I think I had prenatal depression with him because I was just dealing with so much crap and so many complications. I ended up being high risk and all of that.
And you had a toddler.
With him was wildly different.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not a guarantee. Like your risk is higher, just like anything else. If you had it before, your risk is higher, but it's not a guarantee. I
Right.
didn't develop it this time around.
And hopefully, again, my two experiences were very, very different. So, but hopefully you can hold it within you to know I did this once.
Yes.
I can do it again.
Yes. And the confidence of a second time parent is so much better too. Like that, it's a world of difference. Like, you're not going to break them.
No.
You know that you know what you're getting into. I feel like with your first kid, you never know exactly what you're going into until it happens.
The only thing that I'm still like really, this is so random, but the only thing that I'm still so nervous about is giving my youngest peanut butter. Like, so I'm allergic to peanut.
Oh,
but but my oldest, it's all she'll eat. Peanut butter sandwiches, peanut butter Nutella, peanut butter and fluff, peanut butter. But with her, she was little and I gave her a little bit of peanut butter and I had like the Benadryl right there, just like waiting. Right. And now they're saying, don't give your kids Benadryl. And I'm like, what am I supposed to do? So she's 17 months and she hasn't had peanut butter yet. But
I don't think my son will have a peanut butter allergy because I had so many food aversions all the way through my pregnancy with him, especially to meat. And when you have gestational diabetes, you have to eat, low carb, high protein. And I was like, well, what the F am I going to eat? Because meat is disgusting.
Yeah.
So I ate a lot of peanut butter with him.
I think you're good.
Is basically like 95% peanut butter.
Yeah, so I think I'll be fine.
Think he'll be allergic to peanut butter because that's basically what made him.
So we'll see. I'll probably just like sit in the parking lot at my pediatrician's office, be like, "Here you go." Anyway, tangent. It kind of brings us to where we are now, and where you are now in your journey, and how I'm so glad that I found your account when I did. Your account and other accounts like it sort of spur me on and inspire me to keep doing what I'm doing. And it's never for me felt like a challenge or a competition. It feels like we're all on the same team.
Yes.
Because the more of us that are out there talking about it,
yes,
the more birthing people are going to hear it.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So I love it. And I thank you for what you do. And I thank you for what you do for PSI. And I thank you for what you're doing on social media and your blog. I've been switching up. I have two questions that I go into every episode saying one of these is going to be my final question. And I use this time to sort of decide what it's going to be. And I'm leaning towards this one more often now, but I think I'm going to stick with it. What is the one thing, it's so hard to pick one thing, but what is the one thing that you hope my listeners take away from your story?
The one thing I hope that you hear is that you are not alone. Having a perinatal mental health condition makes you feel like the loneliest person in the world, especially if you have friends that have kids at the same time as you and everything looks so happy. And social media is a great thing. Obviously, I'm on social media. I do social media for a lot of things, but social media is a highlight reel.
Yep.
You do not see the nights where you are up with your baby for hours because they just will not go back to sleep.
Exactly.
You don't see the absolute meltdown the toddler had because you can't find the one pair of shoes she wants to find, and God knows where they are in this house. They could be at your parents' house. They could be at Nana's house. But that is the one pair of shoes she wants, and God help you. No one sees that. No one. You see the highlight reel. And I just want you to know that you are not alone. You are never, ever alone. There are so many of us that know exactly how you feel, have been in your shoes, and we got better, which means you can get better.
Yep. Love it. That's literally, all right, you are not alone. I see you. That is our tagline on Quiet Connection. So I love it.
You, and I was you, and I am you.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm going to add on, this is great. We can have these conversations and we can laugh and giggle about it. I'm still healing.
Yes.
I'm still healing. And that's okay too.
Mm-hmm. Healing is a journey, and it's not a straight line up.
Mm-mm.
Like, you're going to have peaks and you're going to have valleys, and you're going to have good days and you're going to have bad days. And as long as you keep going, you're still healing. You're still getting better. So just don't give up, because even the smallest steps are still moving forward.
Yep.
And one bad day doesn't erase everything you've been through and everything you've gone through and all the progress that you've made. Because it's not a straight line up.
No, healing is not linear.
Yes.
I've learned all of these
I wish it
wonderful
was.
things.
I really wish it was, but it's
Wouldn't
not.
that be nice? No, it is not. But yes, you will get better.
Yes.
Something else that you said. I'm petitioning. We need to like create like a hashtag. I bet you there is one, but like hashtag up at night or something. Like when you're up at 1 or 2, 3, 4 in the morning and you're crying because your kid has been crying and you can't latch or whatever, like literally just get on Threads, get on Facebook, get on Instagram, hashtag up, or like that probably not hashtag up. That probably would be, but like, yeah, probably not that. I don't know what that would bring us to, but like we need to come up with something that like connects us so that we know in that moment, like, oh yeah, like millions of people are up right now.
There are millions of parents that are up right now dealing with the exact same crap that you are dealing with.
Yes. All right, listeners, send us your feedback because clearly I can't make up a hashtag.
Right.
Yeah, no. Anyway, thank you so much for joining me and taking the time to tell your story.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, and just keep doing what you're doing, listeners. Go find Beyond PPD and join us all for the ride. Thank you, Courtney, for sharing your story with me and for all the work you do to continue the fight to end the stigma surrounding PMADs. It's been so nice to be able to continue connecting with you far beyond this recording. Listeners, please check out Courtney's Instagram account at Beyond PPD for more information about the work that she is doing with Postpartum Support International and the Blue Dot Project. You can keep up with us on Quiet Connection by following us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Threads at Quiet Connection or at Quiet Connection Podcast. You can help our community grow by reviewing and sharing our podcast on social media. To share your personal journey, you can contact us through our website at quietconnectionpodcast.com or by email at quietconnectionppmh@gmail.com. Join us next time when another story is told and you realize you are not alone. I see you.